My husband, this is not a debt, it's a trap. I've written down the market prices and daily wages I heard at every market
Trap?
day.
Let me see.
If this ledger is correct, I could work my entire life and never repay this debt. My hands trembled as I set down No Man-deuk's grain ledger. I watched his eyes turn cold. The villagers gathered in the courtyard began turning away, one by one. No one stood up for me. There was a shocking reason why things had come to this. That morning began like any other. I rose before dawn, washed my face with cold water, and put on my threadbare jacket. Today was the day to weed the rice paddies at No Man-deuk's estate. The day's wage was 1.5 dough of rice. Half of that went immediately toward my grain debt, so what actually ended up in my hands was barely more than half a dough. I was passing the village entrance when I heard the women doing laundry at the well whispering among themselves. Isn't he just so docile? Even when Master No treats him that way, he never says a word. It's not docile, it's simple-minded. I wonder if he even knows what's written in that ledger. I didn't stop walking. I pretended not to hear. Getting angry wouldn't change anything. No Man-deuk's house was the largest in the village. It had a tile roof with servant quarters, and the granary was always filled with rice. Baek Do-yun, you're here. No Man-deuk sat on the wooden veranda, smoking his long pipe. Beside him, as always, lay his ledger. After you finish weeding today, I'll give you another 1.5 dough of rice. How much will you put toward your debt this time? He asked with a smile. I hated that smile, the pretense of kindness. The walk to the paddies was long. I bent my back, pulling weeds until the sun reached its zenith. My hands grew rough, my back ached. The other day, laborers working alongside me chatted about this and that, but I barely spoke. Talking took extra energy, and if I got tired, the work would fall behind. When the sun began its descent westward, I finished my work and returned to No Man-deuk's house. He measured out 1.5 dough of rice and handed it to me. Then he opened his ledger. Today's wage is 1.5 dough, and you're putting in 1/2 dough and a half toward your debt, so the principal goes from 20 siak to 20 siak and 1/2 dough and a half. I nodded. The calculation was correct. I wasn't working to pay off my debt, I was working and my debt was still growing. Do-yun, it's been 10 years since your father borrowed that grain, hasn't it? No Man-deuk pointed at the ledger with his finger. 10 years ago, during a year of famine, my father borrowed rice from No Man-deuk to feed his family. Tenseok, my father ultimately couldn't repay the debt and passed away 5 years ago. And that debt was transferred entirely to me. Remember what I said when your father died? I said we could forget about the debt, but you insisted on repaying it. The truth was, I had no choice at all back then. On my way home, I passed through the marketplace. The sun was setting, but a few merchants were still packing up their wares. Do-yun, a voice called from behind. I turned to see Seok-gi, who lived in the same village. Brother? When are you going to finish paying off that debt? From what I can see, you'll never pay it off in your lifetime. Seok-gi spoke with a worried expression. I shrugged my shoulders. I'll pay it back until I can pay it back. By the time I reached home, it had already grown dark. One room in a small thatched house, the only property my father had left behind. I started a fire and began making porridge with the 1/2 dough of rice. I poured water into the pot and added the washed rice. The bubbling sound filled the quiet night. As I ate my porridge, I thought about the ledger. The densely written numbers. The number 20 sock written next to my name. Before going to bed, I took out a small wooden box. It was one of the things my father had left behind. Inside were several sheets of paper. Words written in my father's hand. I unfolded the paper my father had left behind. Written on it were these words, "Righteousness is more important than profit, and integrity is more important than life itself." It was a passage my father had copied from some book. I read those words and smiled bitterly. My father knew how to read. He was one of the few literate people in the village. That's why he taught me the 1,000-character classic when I was young. Do-yun, you must know how to read so others won't deceive you. Father always said that. But father was deceived in the end. Deceived by No Man-deuk's ledger. Or perhaps he wasn't deceived, perhaps he knew but had no choice. When you're hungry, a person must do whatever it takes. Righteousness, integrity. What use were such things to me? The rice I'd eat tomorrow was far more important. Yet strangely, I couldn't throw that paper away. The paper with my father's handwriting on it. Those seemingly meaningless words. I put the paper back in the box and closed my eyes. The next day was the same, and the day after that too. The numbers in the ledger grew little by little. Then one day came. A new notice was posted at the marketplace. News that the county magistrate had changed. The newly appointed magistrate was a man named Jang, who had a reputation for being honest and caring for the people. The villagers whispered. They say this magistrate is different. Well, they all are at first. No, I heard that as soon as he arrived, he inspected all the clerks' ledgers. As I listened to this talk, I felt a strange emotion. Was it hope? When I went to No Man-deuk's house after finishing work that day, I asked a different question than usual. I'd like to look at the ledger in detail. No Man-deuk's expression hardened. He set down his pipe and looked directly at me. Why? Do you think I've deceived you? No. I just want to know exactly how much I owe. You haven't seemed very curious until now. Now I want to know. Silence fell. No Man-deuk stared at me for a long time, then finally opened the ledger and showed it to me. Look here. Your father borrowed 10 siok 10 years ago. With 3/10 interest each year, the principal alone now exceeds 20 siok. And what you've repaid amounts to about 5 siok in total. His fingers traced the numbers with practiced ease, but there was something defensive in his posture. I peered into the ledger. The dense writing, the dates and numbers, and my name written beside them. But something was wrong. My hands trembled as I looked at the ledger. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was. No Man-deuk seemed to read my expression and pulled the ledger back toward himself. Is there something you're curious about? No, sir, I answered and returned home. That night, sleep wouldn't come. The numbers from the ledger kept dancing before my eyes. Something was off. But with my limited understanding, I couldn't figure out what it was. About 2 weeks later, the village headman came to my house. He sat on the wooden floor with an awkward expression, unable to speak for a long while before finally opening his mouth. Do-yun, a marriage proposal has come for you. I looked up at the headman in shock. A marriage proposal? Who would send their daughter to someone like me, a man with a debt of over 20 siok, someone who barely survived on day labor? Who is it? Scholar Yu's daughter. Her name is Yeon-hwa. Scholar Yu's household? I was even more surprised. Yeon-hwa is somewhat unusual. Since childhood, she's been quiet and seemed vacant, earning her a reputation in the village for living in a daze. Finding her a match has been difficult, it seems. That's why Scholar Yu's household approached you. I smiled bitterly. In the end, both Yeon-hwa and I were each other's last choice. A marriage between people no one else wanted. On the morning of the wedding, I took off my threadbare jacket and put on the ceremonial robe the headman had lent me. My reflection in the mirror looked unfamiliar. I had never worn such clothes in my life. I thought for a long while. Marriage didn't seem like it would improve my circumstances. If anything, it would just add the burden of one more person to feed. But strangely, I couldn't find a reason to refuse either. All right, I'll do it. Scholar Yu's house was more run down than I expected. Roof tiles were broken here and there, and the wall had crumbled. But the courtyard was swept clean, and flowers had been planted in front of the gate. I saw Yeon-hwa for the first time during the wedding ceremony itself. Dressed in a red skirt and jacket, she kept her head bowed. I couldn't see her face properly, but I noticed her hands were slender and pale. It was a modest ceremony. With just a few villagers gathered, we bowed and shared wedding cups. No Man-deuk came too. As a wedding gift, he gave us 1 seom of rice. People marveled at No Man-deuk's generosity, but I knew better. That rice would ultimately be added to my debt. After the ceremony, Yeon-hwa came with me to my house, 1 room in a small thatched house. She looked around without saying a word. Was she disappointed? Or was it what she had expected? I'm sorry it's so small. I spoke first. Yeon-hwa shook her head. It's fine. Her voice was low and calm. Unlike the rumors of her being vacant, her eyes were clear and alert. The sun set and night fell. It was our wedding night. I sat awkwardly on one side of the room and Yeon-hwa sat on the opposite side. A candle dimly lit the room. Husband. Yeon-hwa spoke first. Yes. May I light another candle? Please do. Yeon-hwa lit another candle. The room grew a little brighter. Then she pulled something from inside her jacket. Several sheets of paper. What is this? I copied your debt documents. I stared at her in shock. She copied the debt documents? How did you... My mother told me that the Yu clan and the No clan are distant relatives. So before the marriage proposal came, I visited No Man-deuk's house once. I saw the ledger briefly then. Yeon-hwa spoke matter-of-factly. And I've been going to the market on market days, recording the prices and wages I heard. Husband. She looked directly at me. This isn't a debt. It's a trap. What do you mean? Look here. Yeon-hwa placed the two papers side by side. 10 years ago during the famine, rice cost 3 nyang per seom. Your father borrowed 10 seok, so it was worth 30 nyang. But No Man-deuk recorded it as 50 nyang in his ledger. Yeon-hwa's slender finger traced the numbers as she explained. And then there's the interest rate. No Man-deuk said it was 30% annually, but in reality he's been adding 30% to the sum of the principal plus interest. This is compound interest. I tried to calculate the numbers, but my head felt muddled. And another thing, the amount you've repaid. No Man-deuk recorded that you've repaid 5 seok, but by my calculations, you've repaid at least 8 seok. I looked at the paper again. If Yeon-hwa's calculations were correct, I had been massively deceived all this time. Then how much do I actually owe? By my calculations, the principal was 30 nyang, and with simple interest over 10 years, it comes to 90 nyang. You've repaid 8 seok, which is approximately 24 nyang worth. So the remaining debt is 66 nyang, which in rice is about 5 seok. 5 seok? Yes. According to No Man-deuk's ledger, it's over 20 seok, but in reality, you only owe about 5 seok. Why did you investigate all this? I asked. Yeon-hwa looked at the candle and answered slowly. My father also owed a debt to No Man-deuk. 5 years ago. Father fell ill then, and lacking money for medicine, he borrowed rice from No Man-deuk. To repay that debt, he sold our family's farmland. He sold 5 plots and paid off the debt completely, but 2 years later, No Man-deuk came again. He said we hadn't calculated the interest. Yeon-hwa's voice trembled slightly. Father collapsed when he heard that. Eventually, that illness worsened and he passed away. I was young then, but I remember Father's last words. Yeon-hwa, don't trust ledgers. Verify with your own eyes. What do you want to do? Yeon-hwa hesitated briefly before speaking. I want to escape from this trap. You, me, and the other people in this village. I don't want to spend our lives bound to No Man-deuk's ledger. Her eyes sparkled in the candlelight. They were clear and resolute eyes, completely unlike the rumors of her being vacant. I looked at the papers again. The numbers, dates, and calculations Yeon-hwa had written down. I thought that these few small sheets of paper might change my life. The new magistrate. I spoke carefully. I heard he's a man named Jang, with a reputation for honesty. What if we showed this to him? I'm not sure, Yeon-hwa answered cautiously. I don't know if the magistrate will listen to common people like us, and No Man-deuk won't stand by idly. Yeon-hwa pulled out another paper. There's one more thing I learned from my investigation. You're not the only one who owes No Man-deuk money. In this village alone, there are more than 12 people. All of them are being deceived in similar ways. 12 people? Yes. And if we include neighboring villages, there are probably more. What if all these people appeal to the magistrate together? But how do we convince them? Everyone will be afraid of No Man-deuk. I'll think about that. Yeon-hwa folded the papers and put them back inside her jacket. Let's sleep now. You must be very shocked. Take your time to think about it. She lay down to sleep. I lay down on the opposite side. After blowing out the candles and lying in the darkness, I could hear Yeon-hwa's steady breathing. I couldn't sleep. My mind was in turmoil. 20 seok was actually 5 seok. I had been deceived for 10 years, and now I had to make a choice. Outside, I could hear the wind. The small house seemed to shake, but strangely, I wasn't afraid. The fact that I wasn't alone, that someone was on my side, seemed to make me a little stronger. The next morning, Yeon-hwa rose as usual and made breakfast porridge. Watching her, I wondered if last night had been a dream. She moved quietly as if nothing had happened, and smiled faintly as she served me the porridge. "Are you going to Master No's place today?" "Yes." "Then act as you always have." Yeon-hwa spoke in a low voice. "Outside you must be as docile as before. You must pretend to know nothing, to suspect nothing. I understand. And let them think I'm simple-minded. The rumor that I live in a daze, that's my best shield right now." That day I went to No Man-deuk's place and worked as usual. Nothing was different. I bent my back pulling weeds, sweated, and received my wages. But something was changing inside me. Now I knew. I knew this debt was a trap, that I was being deceived. "Do-yun, I heard you got married?" "Congratulations," No Man-deuk said, smoking his pipe. "Thank you. Scholar Yu's daughter, right? Yeon-hwa, I think? I heard she's a bit simple-minded." "Is she all right?" "She's fine." "Good. For someone like you, a docile wife is perfect. A disobedient woman would give you headaches." No Man-deuk laughed and opened his ledger. I looked at it with no expression. But inside I was counting the numbers, just as Yeon-hwa had taught me. When I returned home, Yeon-hwa was sweeping the yard. A woman from the neighboring house was peering over the wall, watching her. "New bride, how's married life?" "Good," Yeon-hwa answered with a vacant expression. The woman smirked and leaned in closer. "You look so gentle. Must be comfortable with no mother-in-law." "Yes, but isn't your husband's house a bit shabby? How can you live in just one room of a thatched house?" "It's fine," Yeon-hwa continued sweeping. The woman left looking disappointed. Once the woman left, Yeon-hwa looked at me and smiled faintly. That smile held a secret. 3 days passed. Yeon-hwa went to the market every day. She said it was to buy sewing materials, but she was actually doing something else. "I met Choi Gam-rai today." One evening, Yeon-hwa said. "Choi Gam-rai?" "Yes, the widow in this village who gathers and sells medicinal herbs, right? I heard she also owes No Man-deuk money." "That's right." "I heard she borrowed money for her husband's funeral and has been repaying it for 5 years. I think I can meet the others through her." Yeon-hwa pulled out a paper from inside her jacket. Names were written on it. "Choi Gam-rai, Park Seok-gi, Mr. Kim, Widow Jong, Young Lee. 11 people in total. These are the people in this village who owe No Man-deuk money." From that day on, I acted even more carefully. In front of No Man-deuk, I was more docile, more simple. He noticed nothing. Or rather, there was no reason for him to notice. I had been obedient to him for 10 years. But quiet movements were stirring throughout the village. Choi Gam-rai met people while gathering herbs. She met Park Seok-gi on the mountain, Mr. Kim on the rice paddy ridge, Widow Jong at the well. All were natural encounters. She whispered to each in a low voice. "You're also being deceived by No Man-deuk. Come to the spring on the back mountain on the night of the full moon. I'll show you the truth." 2 days before the full moon, Yeon-hwa showed me a large sheet of paper. "What is this?" "A ledger." Yeon-hwa unfolded the paper. It was covered with dense writing. "I've gathered all the transaction details for each person. When, how much, under what conditions they borrowed. And I've researched the market prices for each date and written them alongside." I looked at the paper closely. It was truly remarkable work. Over the past 2 weeks, Yeon-hwa had walked around the marketplace asking merchants, searching for records, calculating, and creating this ledger. Look here. 3 years ago in autumn, rice cost 4 nyang per seom. But No Man-deuk calculated it at 5 nyang for Park Seok-gi. That alone was a deception of 1 nyang. And here, Mr. Kim's case. They agreed on a daily wage of 1 do of rice, but No Man-deuk's ledger shows half a do. Mr. Kim worked 100 days, so he was cheated out of 50 do. Yeon-hwa explained, pointing to each item with her finger. In every transaction, there was a difference between No Man-deuk's numbers and the actual market prices. With this ledger, the lies reveal themselves. Even if No Man-deuk brings his ledger, market prices don't lie. There are dates, places, and witnesses. The night of the full moon arrived. After sunset, Yeon-hwa and I quietly left the house. The path to the back mountain was dark, but moonlight illuminated our way. In 2 days, the people will gather. I'll show them this ledger and persuade them to appeal to the magistrate together. What if it doesn't work? It's still fine. At least we'll know the truth. And knowing the truth alone changes one's life. When we arrived at the spring, several people were already there. Choi Gyum-rai, Park Seok-gi, Mr. Kim, Widow Jung. One by one, people gathered. 11 people in total. Just as Yeon-hwa had said. People looked at each other in amazement. They had thought they were the only ones suffering, but now they realized others were in the same situation. Everyone has come, Yeon-hwa said quietly. People whispered as they looked at her. They couldn't believe that the supposedly simple-minded daughter of Scholar Yu had organized this gathering. Do you know why I secretly gathered you all here like this? Yeon-hwa pulled out the large paper from inside her jacket. Under the moonlight, the paper glowed white. We all owe No Man-deuk money, and we're working our entire lives trying to repay those debts. But isn't it strange? No matter how much we work, the debt doesn't decrease. It only grows. People nodded. The reason is simple. Because No Man-deuk is deceiving us. Murmurs rose. Choi Gyum-rai stepped forward and raised her hand. Be quiet. Listen to Yeon-hwa. Yeon-hwa unfolded the paper. Here are the transaction details for each of you. When, how much, under what conditions you borrowed, and what the market prices were on those days. When you compare these two, you can see how No Man-deuk deceived us. Yeon-hwa began explaining one by one. Park Seok-gi's case, mister. Kim's case, Widow Jong's case. In every person's transactions, the differences between No Man-deuk's ledger and the actual market prices were revealed. People's expressions changed. From shock to anger, from anger to sorrow. Some clenched their fists, some shed tears. This can't be. Park Seok-gi groaned. I've been working for 5 years now, but my debt hasn't decreased at all. Are you saying this was all deception? Yes, Yeon-hwa answered firmly. We were all deceived. 10 years, 5 years, 3 years. How long we were deceived differs, but the deception is the same. Then what should we do, Mr. Kim asked. Yeon-hwa was silent for a moment. Then she spoke slowly. We must appeal to the magistrate together. Will the magistrate help us? I don't know, but we must try. One person's appeal might be dismissed, but if 11 of us go together, it might be different. Besides, we have evidence. Yeon-hwa held up the paper. This ledger. Market prices, dates, and witnesses. These don't lie. But No Man-deuk has power. He has money and knows people in the government offices. Who would believe people like us? Widow Jong said in an anxious voice. Yeon-hwa nodded. You're right, too. It could be dangerous. If we fail, we might face greater retaliation. So I won't force anyone. Each of you must choose. Will you go together, or will you continue living as you are now? Silence fell. Under the moonlight, 11 people looked at each other. I'll go. Choi Gyum-rai spoke first. I'll go too, Park Seok-gi said. One by one, people raised their hands. In the end, all 11 decided to go together. Thank you. Yeon-hwa bowed deeply. Whether we win or lose, at least having fought together will be meaningful. That night at the spring, we made plans. When to visit the magistrate, who would speak first. How to present the ledger. Yeon-hwa calmly organized everything. I have one more request, Yeon-hwa said. Until this is over, don't show anything in front of No Man-deuk. Act docile as usual, pretend to know nothing. If he realizes everything ends, people nodded. Then one by one, they quietly descended the mountain. Shadows scattered under the moonlight. As Yeon-hwa and I were the last to leave the spring, Yeon-hwa asked, Husband, aren't you afraid? I am afraid, I answered honestly. But strangely, I feel relieved. What I've held in for 10 years feels like it's finally about to burst out. Yeon-hwa smiled faintly. Me too. For 5 years since my father passed away, I've been waiting, believing that someday I could break this trap. We held hands and descended the mountain. Moonlight illuminated our path. That light looked like hope. Still distant and faint, but definitely their hope.